but we are coming up in five. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I've been talking about the Chicago ICE raids, which are moving to Portland. They're moving throughout the country. We're not alone. We have the National Guard who've been deployed to Chicago. We're not alone. We're going to see a lot of things happen, and I want to hear um, where this is all going because it's not just the ICE raids. We're living in a police state, and there is a culture that goes with the police state. And I certainly want Attorney Mark Fancher to go into that with us, not just in terms of how we socialize and move about, but in terms of our rights, what we can and cannot do. Do you need to carry ID? Yes, you do at all times. At all times. Um, and so we need to talk about that. We need to talk about people who are being mistreated uh, by the police in this environment. To be sure, you've got a lot of very honorable people who are part of our law enforcement community, but you have a lot of people who are running law enforcement who really want to create an authoritarian environment, which is never good for anybody ultimately. It really smashes the social contract. It destroys the republic. And the democratic aspects that we do have in our governance is thrown out the window. There's a lot that is coming in, a lot of information that's coming in about that big raid that everyone is talking about in Chicago that occurred last Tuesday morning around 1 o'clock in the morning. And if you follow the money, you're going to find a lot of other ish interests that converged. This was not just about seizing people who might have been involved in selling drugs or being gang members. It really is not even about that at all. This building was purchased for $18 million. And this is a middle class community, at least that part of it is, and that part of South Shore. And the building had fallen into disrepair. There were many, many, many complaints by those who had been rent paying residents about stairwells that did not have lighting, uh, things in the building, amenities that were just not working. And so we got to talk about that, everybody, really, like right away. Right away. We've got to follow the money because now that the building has been put in receivership, will the owners now rebuy it for cheap? Yeah. Everyone keeps throwing out, when we look at the corporate media, they keep talking about the gangs and really calming down that activity. There's a lot more to this than that. Black and brown people take the hits, and some other people are making the money. There's a lot of money that's being made off of the labor in these detention camps. We got a lot to talk about, and a lot of people are, as I shared, are being mistreated. Being mistreated. At least one person has lost his life. Got to talk about this here on the Santita Jackson Show. As we do that, I want you to reach out to me on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social. I'm on X at SantitaJ. I'm also on Facebook, Santita Jackson and Friends. I'm on Instagram, Santita Jackson IG, Santita Jackson IG, and of course, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody like and share, like and share, like and share. Hello, Samantha and Dave and Bernadette and Robert and Solomon and so many of you who I cannot see. Sending you so much love today. And let's get right to it because we've got a tremendous panel. As we look at our mayor, Brandon Johnson, who, according to Block Club Chicago, which was one of our great media outlets here in Chicago, they write this: federal agents will no longer be able to use city owned property as staging areas, according to an executive order filed today by Mayor Brandon Johnson. The order also encourages private property owners to put up signs to deter agents from assembling on their property. That's very, very promising, given the fact that the president just last week said that the military would be deployed to cities all over the country, and basically they would get their practice on the enemy within, American citizens. President Trump said that, and Mayor Brandon Johnson is pushing back against that. So I want to know what your thoughts are. So reach out to me over here on on our chat line with the Morning Star. Solomon says, "Show ICE some love. They are out there doing the Lord's work." And I want us to speak to that. Um, and Dave Dowling says, "It seems with ICE, the new secret police and the sixth largest army in the world, people have no rights or freedoms." A lot of people have a lot of opinions about this because even with the controversy surrounding a lot of the orders and the policies of the current administration, the president really he's maintaining um, a decent amount of popularity. Almost 50% of Americans approve of his works. So, what do you think about that? I want you to reach out to me and let me know what your thoughts are. We've got Rich Wallace. We've never had you on the show before. Equity and transformation. You're doing a lot of great work in Chicago, and we need to replicate all over the country. And while we're looking at Chicago today, Minneapolis, I want you to know it's coming your way. You've got a lot of immigrants there. No one is, no one should feel that they are removed from this. This could happen to you. Please carry your identification with you. We've got attorney Mark Fancher, of course, brilliant, brilliant attorney and civil libertarian. I'm going to start with Chaparral Wells. Chaparral Wells, you live in the heart of this community, and you are seeing this happen uh, every day. And it was happening more west, Mr. Wallace, but I think what was stunning for people was that it happened in the middle of South Shore, like right in the heart of the black community, middle class black Chicago. It's not supposed to happen here. Wink, nod, wink, nod. Ha. Oh, no, but it did. Chaparral Wells, why is this of such concern to you? Chaparral, are you there? Well, we'll get her up in a hot second. But, oh, okay, I think I hear you now. Chaparral?
Okay.
Okay, I got you. What's going on? Oh, well, we're going to get her back. She just went down. Richard Wallace, why don't you begin things then? I mean, what happened last Tuesday, and why? And there's been a lot of activity around that, because what people are not seeing on national and international TV is the resistance that is growing. I hope that it will become that it will be nonviolent resistance, because that is how we have won. But you talk to me. What really jumps out at people about this raid that happened last Tuesday at around 1 in the morning? Richard Wallace. Oh, you know what? You're on mute. Okay. Okay, you're on mute now. Oh my word. What? Go out and come back in. And it's
It's
okay.
okay.
All right. Okay, I think I have you now. Nope.
Can you
There
hear
you
me
go.
now?
Got
You can
you.
hear me?
I
All
got you.
right. Okay.
It's all
Yeah,
right.
I want to start with acknowledging the question in the chat around this being the Lord's work. John 3:17-18, it says, I had to go back and find the scripture. It states that if you see a brother in need and do not help him, the love of God does not truly abide in you. Right? It's a very important passage in the Bible. Essentially, that it goes back to that I am my brother's keeper, right? And that's the spirit of the work that we do at Equity and Transformation. The spirit we try to move forward. Um, Babies being zip tied is not the Lord's work. Um, uh, Helicopters and propelling from helicopters, dropping flashbang grenades on elderly folks is not the Lord's work. And I challenge folks to think better of the Lord than that. And so that's a piece that I'll leave that there. I think as it relates to what we're seeing in the city of Chicago, it is it is a show of force. Um, it is the clinch of submission in a state that did not approve of this presidency of this administration. And in the response, I've never seen a response to those who would who have who were not as necessarily interested in this president, um, but understood that we lost the election. And I've never been alive while for a president to essentially punish those states that did not support him. It's an odd experience in real life, right? What happened on the south side of Chicago and also what happened on the west side of Chicago, where I think there was the assumption in a lot of Black families and a lot of our households that this was not going to affect us. And the reality is that it did, and it does. And it should affect us for a number of ways. I mean, it's affecting us in the ways of young brothers that were choked right in front of this building and I'm sitting in front of by ICE agents. Again, the elderly and the women and children that were escorted out of that building with zip ties, right? But then also in the trauma, right? What we saw when Governor Abbott bust thousands of migrants to the city of Chicago is the perfect placement of those migrants in Black communities. And so the what you're seeing on TV and what you're witnessing and what this brother in this call said is the Lord's work is happening right in front of our eyes. And so you got children going to school, Black babies going to school, seeing military personnel with ARs and throwing tear gas grenades in front of babies, right? Like, so they intend. I mean, I think a lot of the strategy has been in place for a while now, and we're just now waking up to it, right? There's so many. You know how many communities you have to pass from Texas to get to the city of Chicago, right? That are predominantly white, and that bus did not stop until it got to a predominantly Black community. And that's something that we also have to wrestle with. Why is it that our children have to bear witness to the harm that's occurring in this moment, right? And why and why they chose not to put not to have this these strategies take place in other communities, right? These are things that I want to be in conversation with our community around, particularly as it relates to the National Guard deployment. It is terrifying, but at the same time, there is resistance. Just today, the mayor's office signed an executive order to ensure that the National Guard does not stage on city-owned property. We've had other executive orders signed in the past over the past few months. We've put together rapid response mutual aid hubs because we already know that our communities have some of the highest rates of unemployment in the nation. And it's not going to get any easier on them over the course of this administration. Grocery prices are going sky high. A lot of I think the benefits related to the working class have gotten, pushed to the back as it relates to, this administration. The cost of living is continuously going up. And so, I think I'm laying out a lot and I'm open to being in conversation with it, but, I want to stick to the facts as well.
Well, I mean, you should lay out a lot because there's a lot of information that people do not have. Chaparral, let me bring you in, just as a Chicagoan, as someone who is seeing this, because you live in a part of town where you have a lot of people from the Hispanic community. So talk to me. What are you seeing?
Yes, Santita. Yes, Santita. Thank you so much for having me on again today. I wanted to say that, Berwyn and Cicero area is like ground zero to what is happening. Our community is being terrorized. I don't know any other way to explain it other than sheer terror that the residents are feeling. Yesterday, we had ICE agents walking up and down our community with AR-14s, trying to see who they could capture. And they are very violent. It is not like, okay, may I see your papers? It's very aggressive, grabbing them, pulling them out of cars, busting car windows, throwing them to the ground, handcuffing them. And these people are fearful because they don't know what's happening, and then these agents are masked, and there's no display of necessarily ice, saying that it's ice, so you don't know if you're being assaulted by an armed person, or if it is ice or the federal agents coming to get you, and they don't identify themselves. It just basically you're being snatched off the street. That's what we're witnessing in Berwyn and Cicero area. Um, we are seeing that they are getting more and more aggressive at the Broadview black site. And they're basically terrorizing our community. Right now, the parents are afraid to send their children to school because they don't know if they will be separated from their children. So now kids, it's affecting the learning because they're traumatized, not knowing if they go home, they'll have parents there. Or if they do go to school, and most of the parents, they end up walking their kids to school, if they're going to be snatched off the street from walking their kids to school. So a lot of people have been, a lot of my migrant friends have been staying indoors or trying to have a safe haven in the church. And we're seeing that they just have a lot of fear about what's happening and what's going on right now, Santita, and they feel a sense of hopelessness about the situation because it only seems to be escalating and not de-escalating, and they're not sure what their rights are, and
Mhm.
and even if they are documented or green card holders, it doesn't matter. They're swapping, they're snatching everyone up, and then they said they'll figure out if you're legal or if you're authorized to be here later. And that's what we're seeing here in the Cicero and Berwyn area, Santita.
Hmm. Attorney Mark Fancher, this is a very, very unsettling time. And we have been talking with Attorney Tanya Woods and you and Attorney Daryl Jones. I've had a lot of attorneys on the show, Mr. Wallace, because it's like every single day, I think we need to hear what it is that how we should interact with ICE and with the police, because this is reshaping our society. I mean, just in real time. Um, but when you hear about the ICE raid in Chicago, that people were rounded up, taken out of their bedrooms, out of their homes near 1 o'clock in the morning. Some people were actually naked and zip tied and marched through the street. And those people who've been able to get home, and wait a minute, the moving vans were there, I think, the next day, or certainly within a couple of days. And people who were able to return to their apartments saw apartments that had been destroyed, just decimated, places where they that are uninhabitable now. And then you find that there is a financial element to this. But let's just step back and before we can even get there, just in real time, what do you make of? I mean, what do you see as a lawyer? People coming, ICE, and the Black Hawk helicopter, and I mean, was it? I mean, just scores and scores of ICE agents and other law enforcement officers in this little building on Clyde and Chappelle on the south side of Chicago. What do you make of that, uh, attorney Mark Fancher?
Well, I think that the dilemma that the country faces right now is that while it's possible for me or anybody else with even basic knowledge of the law to give you an entire catalog of rights that people have in situations like this that are being flagrantly violated, the problem is that there is no opportunity to enforce them. The strategy that the Trump administration has adopted generally, and in particular with this situation, is to aggressively and without any concern at all to violate every law that they want to violate, and then leave it to others to try and challenge what they're doing in the courts, which is fine with them because courts don't move instantly, they don't move immediately. And so, in the time that it takes in order to mount legal challenges to what they are doing, they have moved on to do other illegal things, to commit other crimes. And so you're constantly playing this game of trying to catch up with them when we are trying to play by the rules, and the rules mean nothing to them. They just will continue to violate them. And if you get a favorable ruling at some point down the road that says that, yes, the Trump administration, ICE, or whoever it is, violated constitutional rights of the people that they terrorized, by that time, these people have been shipped off to who knows where, or they're dead, or the damage has been done. And so I think that that's the challenge that we confront right now is how to rein in and bring under control a regime that is completely out of control. And I think that there is an answer to it, which has been answered, which has been provided historically. The question is whether people of this country are at a level or at a place where they're able to effect that remedy. And that remedy, quite simply, is revolution. It's not uncommon, it's not new for regimes to go out of control and to become dictatorial, to become authoritarian, to violate human rights and all of those kinds of things. And usually, when that happens, the masses of people come together and they say, well, this is intolerable. The regime is not respecting the law. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. So we're going to just have to take control of the machinery of state by whatever means are necessary. And that's what makes revolutions happen. Usually, what happens in a country that is facing that kind of a situation is that you have a very small elite group that runs the regime or a single individual, and everybody else is oppressed. And so it's easy to build unity among the population because everybody has a single minded purpose. They've identified who the enemy is, they're going to come together and they're going to overthrow him. We have a very complicated situation in this country because not only do we have really crazy extremists who make up the MAGA masses, but we also, even within communities that have historically been oppressed, we have a great deal of confusion there and a lot of division. So, certainly among the MAGA group, I saw a quote earlier today from a disgruntled MAGA person who said that she had voted for Trump and loved Trump initially, but was now having second thoughts, not because she had seen the contradictions and the crimes that Trump is committing, but her grievance was that he was hurting the wrong people. That underlying the MAGA phenomenon is an element of hatred and resentment and anger. It's not just that they wanted their interests protected and advanced, but they wanted to hurt people who they regarded as others or as enemies for whatever reason. And generally, those were communities of color, which is really at bottom why the Trump administration's program has been so racialized. And because it's playing to that sentiment that exists among the MAGA mob, that basically this was supposed to be a white person's country. It was designed that way. It should remain that way. But that's at risk now because all of these people are coming across the border who are not white. And it's changing the population. And the projections demographically are for white people to become a minority in a country that's rightfully theirs. And so, for that reason, you need to get rid of as many brown people as possible. We can say for public consumption that we're going after criminals and people who are dangerous and all of that. But really, the objective is to just get rid of as many brown people as we can find. Just get rid of them so that this can remain a white person's country. And the tragedy, the pathetic tragedy, is that there are people who are not necessarily Latino, but who are people of color, who look at that and somehow conclude that because right now the Trump administration is focused on trying to get rid of brown Spanish speaking people, that somehow they enjoy some sort of favored status, and that once they have eliminated them, then they will be the happy favored minority group. That now these black people will be the ones that will enjoy the scraps from the master's table, whereas the brown people have been trying to steal their scraps, and they want to get rid of them too. And so they sign on with the Trump agenda as well, and they're on board with it, and they're only going to find out that because this is supposed to be a white person's country, that once they get rid of the brown people, they're going to finish up. They're going to do a mop-up operation and get rid of the black people too. And if nothing else should speak to them, it should be the actions of the Trump administration. He speaks forever about getting rid of brown people or getting rid of black people because they come from S-hole countries and they're creating problems. They're murderers, they're thieves, they're rapists, they're terrorists. And besides, the US just can't take any more people who are immigrating into this country. We're at our capacity. We just can't take them. But then he'll turn around immediately and say that he would welcome having Scandinavian people come into this country. He rolls out the red carpet for Afrikaners, white South Africans who benefited from apartheid in South Africa. And there is this blatant contradiction that people just cannot and will not see. So when you start looking at the complexity of the population in this country, you've got MAGA extremists, you've got confused black people, you've got brown Spanish speaking people who are also on board with the ICE agenda because they think they too will be the favorite Latinos. You've got all of this confusion. It's really, really hard to imagine how these people, these communities can come together for purposes of revolution. So, bottom line is, we've got a real dilemma, a real challenge, a real problem. That's not to say that there are not strategies that can be pursued, but they have to be way out of the box.
Well, Rich Wallace, what are your thoughts? Because you are working in coalition on the ground with people. I mean, most of us don't know that 20% of the migrant population in Chicago are Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, and I'm so glad that Mayor Johnson highlighted this. Uh, at the beginning of the Ukraine conflict, at least 38,000 Ukrainians were brought to Chicago, just alone.
Yeah.
I mean, our governor is of Ukrainian extraction. I'm not upset about it, but no one said anything about them. Nobody. They were just absorbed into the community. If we paid for the Mexican Americans and the Venezuelans, and the Mexican migrants and the Venezuelan migrants, we paid for them too. Because that's just what works when you have people who are seeking refuge, right? But that was never, and that never comes up in conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, the governor doesn't even bring it up. I mean, it took Mayor Johnson to bring it up. He said, now, we absorbed them. They went to the Ukrainian village and all around the city. Nobody said a word.
Yeah.
But the people are pushing the mayor to go after these brown people who are populating some of the most important jobs that we have in our society. But number one, even if they didn't, they're human beings. You just don't treat people this way.
No. And it goes back to August of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Abbott, right? That's when the crisis began.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Abbott.
Governor Abbott down in Texas.
Yeah, I remember that. Governor Abbott down in Texas began busing migrants to places like the city of Chicago. Mm-hmm. This is in 2022. His reason at the time was that it was due to what he described the lack of federal action on the border. The cost of that program was $221 million, right, that our taxpayers paid, right? So in a time when we're talking about the grocery prices are rising, right? Folks are getting ready to lose their Medicaid. We don't have money for health insurance, right? We don't have money for subsidies for groceries and WIC and everything else but they got $21 million to begin this process. And I like to think about it as manufactured crisis, mm-hmm. right? Because Governor Abbott, who acknowledges himself as a conservative, as a Republican, created the problem in the city of Chicago. And again, the conservatives are going to somehow solve it, right? So now they're spending billions on top of billions to solve a problem that they invested billions and billions to create. And at the same time, we're seeing, right, taxpayers are seeing increases on groceries, our health insurance premiums are going up, so on and so forth, right? So they don't have resources for programs that support us, that keep our families healthy, that ensure that we have access to produce and fresh groceries, so on and so forth. But they got resources for this, right? This is like, what are we choosing? You know, what are we choosing? And so I think it was Solomon who spoke before me. I just want to just applaud you on, you know, the thorough. I really didn't have much to say after you got done, because it is exactly that. And so in cities like Chicago, where, you know, we have some areas where the average per capita income, like West Garfield Park, is $11,900 a year, is what our folks are surviving on, right? We don't have any. There's no relief for those circumstances, but there's an abundance and almost an infinite amount of resources for terror, right? For helicopters to fly over residential buildings and propel, right? And another thing that we're going to have to wrestle with is the reality that I think the average, federal ICE agent, you know, the salary is around $100,000 a year, right? And that's without a college degree, so on and so forth. It's the end of the industrial era, right? A lot of folks are out here looking for employment. So why I believe in revolution, one of the challenges I see is that so many of our folks are being absorbed into these jobs because it's the only place that's going to be available for employment for a lot of working class individuals, right? So I don't necessarily know if their interests are aligned with the objectives of mass terror, et cetera, but their financial demands are met through this job, right? And so you're seeing places, specifically in the South, where you got rural white workers who would probably love working at a factory, but the factories have closed. That was NAFTA, right? Those jobs are now you're competing with a global workforce, and they can pay somebody 30 cents a day or $2 a day somewhere else. So of course they're not gonna pay you a minimum wage here. They'll take that job and move it somewhere else. So you ain't got those factory jobs no more, right? One of the main employers, right, is going to be opportunities like this, right, where you're signing up to literally go terrorize other Americans simply to make ends meet, right? And so somehow we have to also wrestle with that reality, and then a lot of folks that are out there under the guise of the National Guard and or ICE agents are working class individuals, right, who had no other option except to explore this route. And I believe at some point in time their humanity will kick in. That's one thing that I do pray for, right? I'm a spiritual person. I do pray for the day when that reality kicks in, because it'll be extremely important to have them, see the light, at the end of the day. Those are the things that I think I'm wrestling with in this current moment, is that, we got an employment crisis. I think the National Labor Statistics, their report found that 52% of Black men in the state of Illinois were in the workforce in 2022, right? So they got swamped. So that means that, 48% of our folks are unemployed, right?
At least, or marginally employed.
Marginally, right? And that's just what's on paper. And so if they came to a corner right now on the west side of Chicago and started signing folks up to be ICE agents for $100,000 a year, you know how many folks gonna join? Not because they believe in the cause, but simply because they have no other means to survive. And so for me, I'm like, we have to also wrestle with the economic conditions in the city of Chicago and the nation. We need to be thinking about how do we prepare our folks for jobs of the future and so on and so forth. Because if not, we're at risk.
Well, I think that we're at risk because we ask Americans constantly, Mr. Wallace, Attorney Fancher, to operate against their own self-interest, their best interests. I mean, that's what we do. We do that extremely well. We send people increasingly as AFRICOM has expanded. You've got an extraordinary number of Black and Brown people who must go through Central America, South America, and Africa. And then they get over there and they become disenchanted, or they buy into imperialism. So I think that at the end of the day, we have to make a decision about where we go from here. Dr. King asked that question more than 60 years ago. Not just chaos or community, but are you an imperialist or not? I had a wonderful gentleman who I like. I don't necessarily align with his politics, but he is Malcolm Nance. I think is a good man who comes from. I think he really does have a certain worldview, and I respect it, even if I don't agree with it. And when he and I were getting into it one day, and I'm going to reach out to him and have him back, because I want to be fair and I want to hear people's points of view. And I said, I guess the challenge is that you're an imperialist and I'm not. And let's be very clear: some of us, some Black people, some poor white people, some brown people, some Asians, some women, some LGBTQ plus, some of everybody whose interests do not align with imperialism are just that. So what do you do with that? I see Chaparral has gotten back in, but let me go to you, Attorney Fancher. I mean, like, where do you go with that? Because we act as if in Dr. King's time, Mr. Wallace and Chaparral and Attorney Fancher, we act as if all Black folks were behind him. That is an abject lie. When he died, he was more unpopular with Black people than he was popular. And because of his unpopularity in the Black community, it made him vulnerable and he could be killed. That's the reality. It just so happens that Reverend Jackson has survived that. But let's be very, very clear. He's had some moments when he's been extremely unpopular and he's had to ride the wave. Because it's interesting, the people who you get these jobs, you open the doors for these people, Attorney Fancher, and guess what? Then they slam it in your face. And they don't go in trying to help the people. They go in saying, wait a minute, now I must protect the franchise. And you say, well, wait a minute, what are you doing? Because you're hurting all of us. Because now they're going to have 18-year-olds who are going to be in ICE. What can an 18-year-old, I mean, I know they can join the armed forces, but I think you're too young. And then you're going to deploy them onto the streets. Mark, before I get back to you, Chaparral, I mean, Mark, what do you do with that? Because you do have people on a collision course with what should be principles to which I think we should adhere, given what we should have learned in our experiences. But many of us go in the opposite direction. Some of us are one good job away from forgetting about everything we came from. Now, you know that.
Yeah. Well, I generally and historically have been very patient with my people because I know how much effort has been made to create confusion, to try and mislead us and misdirect us and manipulate us and exploit us. I understand all of that. But we're at a crisis moment, and I don't have time for it now. If you are a person of African descent, if you are a brown Latino, if you are indigenous to this country, and you are on board with what's going on, you're a pathetic excuse of a human being. And I say that so in a way that people can understand it, you have to look at what has happened historically, and maybe you can appreciate it from a distance. During the period of enslavement, there were African people who signed on to be overseers, to have as their job riding herd over those in the fields, to beat them and to punish them and flog them, only because they thought that by doing that, they could get favored treatment, that they could get a little bit more fat back than everybody else, that they could have a house that might be a little bit better constructed than everybody else's. And they were willing to do that at the expense of others. And if they and even though they're venerated and applauded, I feel the same way about the Buffalo Soldiers, because these were people who, if you look at what they did in the interest of the US spreading empire, they went out and engaged in warfare against the populations who had every right to have this territory as their own and to the exclusion of others. And they engaged in warfare against them, a community that ultimately was the target of genocide. And so, if you are unable to recognize our shared humanity, to understand that what's happening to these communities, what ICE is doing to them in terrorizing them and their children and their elders, is just fundamentally unjust.
Let me interrupt you here because Solomon, bless your heart, Julio and Hector are going to Uganda. Does that make it right? I mean, Mark, given what we have experienced, I don't want anyone else to experience that ever again. That's the problem that we see in the Middle East. That means you're spiritually immature, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Because if you come out of a situation bitter and not better, you didn't learn.
yeah, and I don't engage with people like Solomon because he's deliberately a troll and is just trying to create controversy and disrupt a discussion that is productive.
And to be
But
fair, Bernadette's response is, may the spirit of the living God rule this platform. May the spirit of evil be bound. Those are the rules here.
amen.
Because at this point in my life, see, I have more days behind me than I have ahead. And even when I had more days ahead of me, I don't want to be unkind. I don't want to be cruel. I believe that we are all children of the same God, Mark. And I remember I was fretting over the invasion of Iraq. And my godmother, may she rest in peace. My aunt Irene said to me, she said, baby, don't you worry. She said, just as God loves you and God loves Americans, God loves people in Iraq too. Sometimes you need to understand that. God loves Hector and Julio. And God's going to judge us by what we did and did not do to and for Hector and Julio.
And if you look at it, look at what he's saying. That basically he's saying that he hates Julio and he hates Hector. I mean, because however he may rationalize it in his head, that's hatred. That he would condemn them to going to some place. But then look at what else is happening.
Hmm.
He's saying that they're going to Uganda, which is in Africa. And I don't know his ancestry, but if by chance he is of African ancestry, he doesn't have enough self-respect to understand that basically what these people are doing is using his homeland as a dumping ground. They have no more respect for it than that. And we are, as you said, children of God. And the one thing that God does not like is hatred. And what they are trying to do is to inspire hatred among different people, to divide us. And anytime you see that at work, then you see that that's Satan at work. And if you want to sign on to that program, hey, then there's not much that we can do.
Wow. Chappelle, your thoughts? Because you've talked about just what has concerned you is the hatefulness that you've heard from some people, and particularly from Black people who've been treated so hatefully. We have an African American museum, but Mr. Wallace, we also have a lynching museum. And when they opened it in 2018, just marking what the 400 years, 4,800 months, and they had 5,000 cases that they were able to confirm. I said, wait a minute, that's at least one lynching a month every month we have been on these shores. Under the Anglo projects, we got here with the Spaniards in the 1500s. I'm like, are you serious? I don't want to be cruel to anybody. I hope that the last lynching was the last lynching that occurred. That's just, this is not right. Chappelle,
Yes, Santita, I can say that I have been getting a lot of backlash from my African American friends because they can't seem to understand why I have compassion for the Latino community. And I tell them it's because I don't want anybody to be oppressed. Not black, not white, not Latino. I want everyone to have the same human rights and dignity that anyone else in this country should have. The fact that our human rights, our constitutional rights, are being impeded on is a problem for me. I don't care. I'm like, okay, if they're here illegally, go through the court system and legally deport them. But to my understanding, most of the Venezuelan people are seeking asylum, political asylum. And so they have the right. Our country has been always able to do that. But now they have circumvented all of the laws in order to put for this Gestapo government, what we're seeing. And so I tell my friends, and I debated them. They was like, well, we need the resources here. And I'm like, hello, they're taking our resources away from. I was like, stop. Guess what? Mayor Johnson did not have any money for black initiatives. The government didn't give him any. And whatever he had, he used it for those black initiatives. The federal dollars that came to Chicagoland for immigrants was basically targeted for immigrants. He can't spend money for black people that has been targeted for immigrants because guess what they're going to do? Send him to jail because he misappropriated funds. So this is what the community is thinking, that the money that Johnson is getting is coming from a pot of money that was allocated for them. They have not allocated any money for our community, which is a problem. Don't get me wrong. I understand the pain, I understand the frustration. But what I'm saying to everyone is that they're not taking any of your money. And if you were aware, they brought, before they brought the 30,000 Venezuelans, they brought 30,000 Ukrainians.
well, wait a
And,
minute, hold
and
on. This goes to Solomon's point. Wait a minute. Because what they did not tell you was that Mayor Johnson opened up 3 more mental health centers. So you could send psychologists, psychiatrists, and social workers into situations where they would ordinarily send police. And when people knew they were having a mental health episode, they could go there. That's part of the reason that crime has gone down. Tens of thousands of our children had a paycheck coming in
The
all
youth
summer
jobs
long
programs. Yep.
because he had a youth employment program so that our children would be able to eat. And Solomon, you said folks want all the illegal migrants to go. The Ukrainians are not illegal. They would be had they, if they had not had the cover of their relatives bringing them in here.
no, they were illegal, Santita. They came over here. They were migrant workers, just like the Latinos. They came over here in the same process. They
I
both
said
got
I
Section
said they
8.
I said they would be had they not had the cover of their relatives bringing them here.
That's true. That is very true. And so what I'm seeing with people like Solomon, they're all saying, "Oh, they're not giving us the funds." Trump made a blanket promise to Black America that I'm going to give you such and such for your support in this Black vote, and he ain't gave y'all a damn dime and have no intentions whatsoever of giving you anything. The thing is that they have made up this in their mind that the division that they already see the division between the black and brown community, and what they're doing is continuing to drive the red wedge between us as they continue to strip all of our resources and protections away, because it's easier, instead of, if we would come together and unite as a community, we could fight this white power. But because we are separate and continue to be divided, it is easier for them to take us all down.
Well, hold on, and let me add this here because I saw someone make a comment about Asians being cunning and quiet. First of all, that is racist. Don't call Asians cunning. Don't do that. Some of the most progressive people I've ever known have been Asian because they are readily identifiable others, and some of the most conservative have also been Asian. Just like I've got progressive black people. I got Clarence Thomas. So just stop it. Don't do that. Just because you haven't seen people from the Asian community, I've seen them out here marching and organizing and working and helping. I've seen that. So just stop doing that. And I am of this mind. Add something constructive to this conversation. Don't play games here. Don't do that. You can go to other shows and do that. You can. Daniel Perez, you make the point, and our progressive brothers here almost every day. He said, in order to fix the crisis, the U.S. no longer has to support neoliberalism. You're absolutely right. But there's some people who want to come together, and there's some people who want to make sense.
Yeah, I
And
gotta
if
jump.
if oh no, please, before you go, because I only have
Yeah,
about 3 or 4 minutes here, I want you to have a minute in which you can close.
yeah. I just want to. Well, thank you for inviting me to the show. Hopefully, I come back. I would love to come back when
You
I'm
have
not
a home here,
dealing
so
with a
just
million crises. But some of the things that I'm thinking about as it relates to the future, I think it's very important to remember. And me too. I had a really unique experience to be to go to school and study sociology and gain a lot of critical theory, I think, which is important to this conversation as it relates to seeing myself as part of a larger and broader community. Um, and we got to think about when we do interact with our folks that are on the other side of the fence. Um, you know, Du Bois talks about the double consciousness or seeing ourselves through the eyes of our fellows, right? A lot of what we have learned, sorry, I'm on the west side, so you're gonna hear these alarms going off, but
I'm
a
on
lot
the
of what
south side. You will hear the alarms too. Hello, thank you very much.
fire ambulance and stuff like that. So, what we see, how we're socialized, right? And how we've learned a lot of these behaviors is not by us. Right, that was the brilliance of the Black Panther Party's breakfast program, is that he had an opportunity to unlearn, for people to unlearn things that they were learning in traditional banking, educational, school systems. That rugged individualism, like just me, that get rich or die trying. It's just me, just me, just me, right? And get us back into the we kind of conversation, because it's super essential for us as folks that are going to be leading and or advocating around this work, not to demonize our people for assuming a position that they've learned, right? The mindset, the scarcity mindset, believing there ain't enough for everybody, is something that we've learned due to the way that this system has treated us. So I'm always in a position of like, no, because I had to be transformed. I didn't always think the way that I think. And if anybody, I mean, for all of the folks that are on the right side of history right now, if you actually play the tape back and recognize what was the moment where I was transformed and or I began to believe in, the we opposed to the I, right? It's humbling, getting to swallow some humility, then we might be able to reach more people because we can replicate those moments. The same moment somebody had to hold my hand through all of my contradictions, right? And walk with me towards this place that I'm in right now. And so at our organization, that's what we're in a commitment to doing. We don't care where you stand or where you lie within this broad political spectrum, because we know that a lot of what we stand for, we have learned to stand for, right? And so for us, it's super important to be able to unpack the why with people, right? The migrants still are, but why? The migrants came all the way over here, but why? And then they took but why, right? And if you roll the tape all the way back, what you'll see is that a lot of folks there's more similarities than there are differences. That's one thing. Another thing is that I actually worked in the temp labor sector. It was the first job that I had. I worked in the staffing agencies. Y'all want to see tensions between Black folks and Latinx folks, go to those staffing agencies. What was happening is that Latinx workers were getting on the bus and going to work, and black folks was getting denied access to labor, right? Which started creating these tensions. And so we brought in interpreters, right? And the Latinx workers were able to explain to the black workers what happens when they get on that bus. The black workers was like, I'll be damned, right? Like you talking about, they was getting paid under minimum wage. They had no protections as it related to the EEOC, OSHA, et cetera, et cetera. They had no protections as workers, so they could be exploited at a higher rate than black workers could be, which is the same reason why a lot of us can find decent employment behind bars when we can't when we home. Why? Because we behind bars, we can get paid sub minimum wage, right? You working for a Fortune 500 in the joint, come home, apply for that same for a job at that same Fortune 500 and can't get it because they got to pay you minimum wage, right? And they're like, now
they'll let you fight the fire, but you can't be a fire person when you come out.
When you fight, and that's what's going on in LA right now. So a lot of this, I'm saying all of that to say that, like, I think our posture, folks that are aware and understand what we're up against, our posture in this moment has to be a posture of absorption, of like real love. You know what I'm saying? For our people, understanding that like we do not control the school system. We don't control the TV. We don't control the radio. We don't control a lot of those things where our people are getting their information. And so we got to walk with our people slowly, create spaces for our people to unlearn some of this stuff, right? And build towards something, because we don't have enough. As 13 or 12% of the US population, we ain't got enough to turn it over fully, right? We need others, specifically in the city of Chicago. We 30%. If us and Latinx communities could actually come together in a real way, we could govern for real. We got real power here, right? So we have more power together than we have apart. And that includes us in the Black community. We have more power together than we have apart. So it's worth it to me to walk slowly with my people, opposed to just cut them. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I believe that we can, you know, we can do this. So I want to say thank you again for having me on the show. I got to get over here to another meeting. I'm running a little bit late, but for you, I wanted to stay. But I appreciate you.
You have a home here. Just know that.
Thank you.
And I'll just say this as I give literally a minute to you, Attorney Fancher, and to you, Chaparral Wells, and Mr. Wallace. Just know this: everybody's welcome here. Even as we talk about correctional officer for the lockdown and pray for him and his family and Solomon Harris, everybody's necessary here. I don't have to agree with you. All I've asked is that you be respectful as you engage with everybody here. That's what I require. Let's be respectful, and let's really move toward a more perfect union and really the best version of ourselves. So let me start with you, Chaparral, and then I'm going to let you close this out, Attorney Mark Fancher. Chaparral, 1 minute.
Yes, Santita, thank you so much for having us on and highlighting these issues. I think it's so important that everybody understands that we all are better together. If we fight together, that's the only way that we could change this country, and to being humane to all of its citizens. What we're seeing right now in Chicago, in LA, in DC is unprecedented. And we've never seen this type, well, I've never seen this type of governance in America before. To me, that they want to roll act, we have to fight back. And we only can do that if we are united and we have one common goal with each other. So I'm hoping that, we look at people with compassion and love, because, I believe in the Bible and I believe in God. And he asks, are we our brother's keeper? And I want to say, yes, I am. Yes, I am. No matter if my brother is black, brown, white, yellow, green, whatever that person is, if we are doing God's work, I only think that we can make a positive impact on the world. Thank you, Santita.
Attorney Mark Fancher.
Yeah, I'll just say this. If you are wishing bad things for other people, if you're wishing for them to have unfortunate developments, unfortunate circumstances, you're wishing them harm. However you may rationalize that in your head, it's hate. And we, as children of God, are charged with loving everybody, no matter who they are, no matter where they are. And I wrote a piece in a publication called the LA Progressive. It's available online. where I advocate eliminating borders altogether, because we all are human beings who share a planet. In the same way that if I decide to move from Michigan to Ohio, I can just pick up and do that. And the state that I move to has to deal with the consequences of my presence there. We should be able to move from the United States to New Zealand, and people from Guatemala to move to the United States. We should be able to do that globally because we're all sharing the planet. We're all human beings, no better, no worse than anybody else. And until we get to the point where we see each other as brothers and sisters, we're able to love God and to love each other, then we're going to have these problems.
Well, you know what I tell you? Patricia makes the point that there are Asians, Latinos, people from the Middle East, Eastern Europeans, and every other group showing up for righteousness. And that's been the blessing of my life. No one has advocated harder for the least of these, and that's been Black people in America, than my father for the past 60 years. That's what he is. He is absolutely, absolutely given his life to that. That having been said, I have met some of the most progressive people who've come from every place. I don't know how they got here, but I'm glad they are here. So everybody in, nobody out. There are some white people who understand righteousness. Bring them in. There are some people from the Asian community, and the Asian community is vast. They're the largest group of people in the world. You've got people who are black, who are brown, who just stop that. Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. If we're gonna learn anything, we should learn that, skin folk ain't kinfolk. It's about coming together, one nation under God. You know, I mean, and to me that's a spiritual destination under God. And God loves each one of us. God loves us all. So let's not play here. I ask that you come here in the right spirit. Stop calling each other names. Stop being unkind to each other here. We don't have time for that. Because I tell you what, if they picked you up, Solomon, or correctional officer for the lockdown, you know what, I would want to, you could call me. And you know what, you could call Attorney Fairchild, and we try our best to help you. You know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. You are one traffic stop away, or you you are a second away from getting detained yourself. And that might completely turn your world upside down. No human being, well, let me put it this way, none of God's children deserve this. You want to know what Jesus would do? It wouldn't be this. Wouldn't be this. And you wouldn't be able to give people some silver, a few little shekels, to betray their brothers and sisters, to leave children outside in zip ties, half dressed or naked without their parents. That ought to do something to you. That ought to do something to you. You ought not want that for anyone. Correctional officer for the lockdown, as we've been praying for the life and the health of your granddaughter. That was your granddaughter who was let out of that building the other night. Think about that. Think about it. It could be anybody. It could be anybody's child. It could be anybody's mother, father, sister, or brother, or friend. No one deserves this. No one. We all have the right to the tree of life. And we all deserve to be treated in a dignified way because we are God's children. Everybody is somebody. And you have an obligation to help people to keep hope alive. Sometimes that's all they have to hold on to. But until you get to where you're going, that's all you need. Faith the size of a mustard seed. Now find your humanity and be kind to people. I'm going to talk about this some more at the bottom of the hour. And talk about this a little bit more, to talk about how people are being tortured and what it is that we're going to do as we go into 2026, Mark Fancher. Because as we go into 2026, people have IDs, they don't have IDs, and they're being displaced from their homes. What are they going to do? Think about that. So, everybody like and share, and I'll see you in a few more minutes here on the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. May God bless each and every one of you, all of us, and be blessings to each other. Back in just a moment.